my sweets! In today's tutorial I will show you how to do some cool shading effects in Clip Studio Paint. And the character that I will be working with here is the main character from SkyTrail, which some of you may or may not know about. It's like a pilot episode of an indie series that I'm working on, so I just like drawing my characters from it a lot. So we're going to learn about lighting and shading and tinting here, and I will show you some cool little effects that you can do if you have any textures on hand. So now that I've got the line work done, let's get started. Alright, the great thing about Clip Studio Paint is that we don't really have to consider the colors in the background right away. We can just go in and color our character however he's supposed to be colored. So even though this object that he's holding and the background around him will eventually affect the way he looks, right now we can just go in and give him some normal colors as if he's standing in a perfectly white room with no stark lights on him. So at this stage you just go through and color your character in. I'm going to set the background to a slightly darker color with a hint of blue in it because I just think that looks nice. This will help us know when we have colored in white parts, such as the eyes and the teeth here. And the band-aid too, I guess. Alright, so remember to keep your character colors separate from the background colors, so I'm going to make a new layer here and color the background in. Alright, we've got the basics down now. So as you can tell, he doesn't really go with this background here. It looks a little bit unnatural, like he's just been copy-pasted into an unnatural environment. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Edit tab with his color selected, and we're going to adjust color balance. There are a number of ways to tint him so that he blends in with the background a little bit more so that he looks like he's actually there, but color balance is the best way. Well, the easiest way. So let's give him a little more yellow and some more red, and then we're going to adjust the brightness and contrast. So he's in a cave, which means that it's going to be pretty dark in there. Alright, that's looking a lot better. You can see the original versus the new one. Now let's make a correction layer so that we can darken everything ourselves and go back and edit it later if we want to. So let's try this with tone curve. So we just click this and start moving this little line around. We can make it dark with high contrast or dark with low contrast. We can make it bright with very little contrast, bright with a lot of contrast. Since there isn't going to be a lot of light and we want the eventual lighting that we're going to have in here be really, really dramatic, I'm going to go with dark with very little contrast. And now we have this layer here, and as you can see we can adjust the opacity on it to make the effect stronger or weaker. Let's just leave it on at 100% for now. Okay, now it's time to go through and shade him in. So what we'll do is right click this create selection, and looks like I may have colored in the lines. Yeah, it's annoying when that happens, but it should be fine. You will want to avoid coloring in the lines though, so check it sometimes and make sure that you're not. Anyways, moving on. Now that we have him selected, make a new layer right above this one. If you make it above this color, this layer correction layer or whatever, it's going to have some weird errors. You won't be able to get the colors exactly right. So do it right here. Set it to multiply, and you can choose an ambient color like these walls to shade him with. And then just take a pen and start shading. So we know that the light is going to be on this side. Let me map that out for you. There will be light coming from this mysterious artifact and a tiny bit of light coming out from over here. Whereas this whole place will be very, very dark. So when you shade him, keep that in mind. The shadows will be clustered on the right, back here, and there won't be a lot of shadows on the left. Alright, now we can go through and change up the color of this shading layer as needed. We would change it to blue if he was outside at night. We can have it as red if we want it to look really warm. So red is a nice human color. So we might end up going with red. Let's just keep going down this scrolly bar and see what happens. We have green, which is really unnatural and interesting. Turquoise to teal, and then we have back to blue. So I really think we're going to just go with red. So here we have our primary shading. And this is what it looks like when it's not set to multiply. It's really a light color. Okay, now we can select him again, and this time we will make an overlay layer, and we will use green for this weird artifact to go, and actually let's use add glow. There we go, that's much better. So when it's really dark, overlay doesn't do much, but add glow will always give a very nice bright effect. We're just going to go through and add the brightest shading here. This green may look a little bit stark, but we can go through and adjust it just like we adjusted the shadow later on. For now, we're just going to get this highlight done. Okay, highlights are done. We can make these brighter or dimmer, and we can go over here and edit them a little bit if we need to. I'm gonna lower the saturation just a bit so that it's not green on the hair, which looks really odd. And we can go cycling through colors again. The red makes it look kind of evil, like if this was red, that would look like he found some dark artifact or something. So that's not what we're going for. Blue is nice and pretty. So if he had something glowing white, we would use blue highlights, but I'm just going to go right back to green. Okay, now comes the fun part. We get to use the airbrush tool. So make a new layer, set it to add glow, get the airbrush, and take this a little closer to yellow, I think. And we're going to start airbrushing glows on this thing. It's a little too dense, I think. So let's try it again. We don't want to have the light right here because it'll drown out the little highlights we have going there. So just make this big subtle glow. And touch it up as needed. We can even use this little blendy brush right here to really smooth it out. I just realized it might seem a little strange the direction his eyes are in since he's holding this cool thing. It was supposed to be implied that he's looking at something even cooler over here, so like we'd have an even bigger green glow coming from this direction. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Okay. You can even use some different shades, like a little touch of yellow and a little bit of blue, and blend some more. Okay, and on this side we'll make another layer, multiply, go over to the red-orange spot right here, and we will shade him in with a gradient. So I have this foreground to transparent one. That's really good. I'm really annoyed by this. How do I remove this? There we go. So you just stretch the line, and then boom, you got a gradient. A nice even gradient. So let's see what happens when we move this behind him. That looks really good. That leaves this stark outline here and still darkens the background. Alright, we can keep adding effects as needed. I want to lighten his eyes a little bit, so I'm going to take white and I'm going to airbrush it in here. Whoa, I don't want green. So I'll have to take it here and then erase where his irises are. I also want to use some blue here, just to make his eyes look clearer and brighter. So just a little bit of blue. Airbrushed in with an overlay setting on the layer. Alright, on to the artifact again. We're going to go into this multiply layer and get blue, because you should shade green with blue. It should be highlighted with yellow and shaded with blue. And just make this big mass in the center of it. maybe a smidge over here. You can also go in with the airbrush set to transparent and airbrush out some of that to give it a cool little effect there. Okay, now for the background. Since it is a background, we can actually take a whole lot of shortcuts with it. So first, let us change up these lines. I want them to be an ambient color, which means we should go back to the reddish brown stuff, which we then darken. No, actually we could just set it to multiply and it would darken by itself as needed. So that looks good. Lower the opacity a bit on this, since the background should not be the focal point of the picture. And then we can go through and shade it in with a new multiply layer. And keep the rules of shading in mind as we do this. The light is coming from this direction, which means the shadows will be on this side. And if you have trouble shading it because of the gradient, just temporarily turn that gradient layer off. Don't try to get it too smooth. Unlike the character, the background can be really nice and sketchy, since messy is pretty natural. Nature is messy. Okay, time for effects. We've got basically all of the shading and highlights done, so we can go through and do overlays and textures to our heart's content. So I'm just going to use this brush, this droplet brush that comes with Clip Studio Paint, to spray some little random objects around. Okay, and then we can go and make another correction layer with a tone curve again and adjust our contrast and brightness. That actually looks really good. We don't want to go too dark, so I think that I will actually take it up here to more brightness and more contrast. And then more glows, because why not? I love making things glowy. And here is a cool little thing we can do on this artifact. Let's draw a random blob here. We'll go to filter, blur. I think radial blur is what we want. And then we can just blur this to an interesting shape that we can then stretch and set to add glow. So by duplicating these, and spinning them around, we now have a cool little glittery effect. And I think the final step will be to have his shadow behind him. So what we're going to do for that is select the layer and make a new layer and just fill it in with black. Transform it and make a shadow behind him like this. We can also go through with mesh transformation to adjust its shape with more freedom. And go through with the airbrush and kind of dim his shadow down as it gets farther away. And there we have it. Our picture is completely done. So I hope this tutorial was useful to you guys. Thank you for requesting it. There's going to be a link to a Project SkyTrail playlist at the end of this video if you want to see more SkyTrail stuff. And I do still take requests, but it might take a little while longer to get to it lately. So just leave your video tutorial requests in the comments and I will get around to it. Don't forget to be a sweet and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all my new videos. I will see you sweets later. Bye!